Well, covering this story for us today is our foreign editor, Philip Turle, who's with me in the studio. And Philip, let's talk first of all about this apparent attack on the Russian base in the east of Ukraine. The Ukrainian version of what happened and the Russian version are rather different, at least when it comes to the number of people that have been killed. What can you tell us?
Well, of course, it's in Ukraine's interest to give a high death toll to try to undermine the Russian feeling that they're winning the war, the morale of the Russian forces, and it's in Russia's interest to downplay this attack, to say, well, there are far fewer casualties than the Ukrainians are making out to be. We're right in the middle here, Nadia, what we've seen dozens of times since this war started on the 24th of February, in a war of communication, a communications war. It's very, very difficult to know exactly what happened and what the real death toll is. The latest figures are 63 dead from the Russians, 400 or so dead from the Ukrainians. What we do know is that this was a training base used mostly for conscripts, that's to say non-professional soldiers, those who'd been called up by the Russian government to fight in the war in Ukraine. What we don't know right now is whether or not munitions were also being stored in this area, and whether or not they also may have been responsible for some of the damage that's taken place. Second point, which is important to note here, is that of the HIMARS rockets. What does HIMARS stand for? It stands for High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, which comes from the United States. Now, 18 or so have been delivered following an agreement by President Biden to Ukraine for use there. And, of course, this would never have been possible. There would never have been these kind of attacks on Russian forces in Donetsk, if it's as bad as it says it is, if the Ukrainian forces hadn't received these US missile launchers.
And meanwhile, in the capital, Kyiv, those Russian attacks are continuing, and it seems that they are still targeting the country's energy infrastructure.
Well, President Putin has actually said in one of his rare comments on the war that he is going to carry on pinpointing energy systems and trying to attack essential infrastructure in Ukraine. So we know that that is what the Russians are doing. He's dismissed the idea that Russia is attacking or pinpointing civilian districts, which also appears to be the case there. So I think we can probably see that there's going to be no let-up there. Was this latest attack, this latest drone attacks against the capital, a result of what the Ukrainians sent in to this military base in the Donetsk region? That, for the moment, we don't know, but it doesn't look as though there's going to be any let-up in this early part of 2023 to the drone attacks that are taking place in Ukraine by the Russians.
Philip Turle, thanks very much indeed for your analysis.